Hello boxing fans, just thought I'd do a video concerning Oleksandr Usyk, former undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, now stepped up to heavyweight. Still a lot of unanswered questions. However, I still think this guy can compete and beat a lot of the top heavyweights currently out there. My concern is at the moment, he's been sitting on the shelf for 6 months and there is still no news or no updates regarding this Joe Joyce interim title fight for the WBO. Now we know he's had step aside money, but do you think at age 34 that was the right thing to do? Because at the moment we're still obviously waiting for news on the big fight between you know who, but the problem with that is that is now delaying all of these mandatories getting their title shot. And this is going to take us easily into 2022. Okay. Now, the main criticisms I'm seeing of Oleksandr Usyk since he stepped up to heavyweight is that a lot of people just don't think he's big enough. And because of that, he just doesn't carry the punching power in order to deal with these guys at heavyweight. Now, I disagree. Now, the main advantage that Usyk brings from cruiserweight is his speed and agility. He can just dance around his opponents. Now, why would he put on more weight and lose those attributes that he's so well known for? Look at Holyfield. No one thought that guy was going to be able to compete at heavyweight. And look what he went on to achieve. Okay? Look, do we like knockouts in heavyweight boxing? Absolutely yes. Myself included. But at the same time, I'm more than okay with seeing a 12-rounder. As long as it's an exciting fight and we get to the best result and the right result at the end of those 12 rounds, that's absolutely fine by me. But with Usyk, like I said, he's been sitting on the shelf now for 6 months. And at 34, he's not going to get any better. We're only going to see a gradual decline now. I don't think we're going to see a big decline compared to a lot of heavyweights at 34, but we will see a gradual one. So him just sitting on the shelf isn't going to do him or the heavyweight division any favours. The sooner he's out and having a fight with someone, anyone, the better. Now, I personally think he shouldn't have taken the step aside money and that he should have kept knocking on the door with the WBO to get that fight, because the more mandatories who get their fights, the more fights we're seeing, and the more chance we're going to get a new heavyweight champion. Now look, I do like unifications and I do like there to be one champion, but at the moment this fight between Joshua and Fury is dragging its heels. And the funny thing about this is, if people like Frank Warren weren't involved with Tyson Fury, he would be hammering on the door with the WBO, demanding this Usyk and Joe Joyce fight. But everyone wants to be paid, so everyone's keeping quiet. These two fights are not going to be, if they do happen, these are not going to be concluded until way into 2022. So all these rankings, these all mean nothing. I mean, we're hearing that Michael Hunter and Filip Hrgovic are about to have an IBF final eliminator. But what is the point of that? Because whoever wins that and goes to number one, Joshua and Fury have got 2 fights to do, first of all. Let's say Joshua is still the holder of those titles. He'll probably have to face his WBO mandatory first. He'll potentially have to face a mandatory with the WBA. The WBC may call for him to fight his mandatory. And then he's got the IBF. So the IBF could be right at the bottom of the chain, because at the moment they've not got a number one contender. The other 3 governing bodies do. So inevitably they will be the ones that are going to be knocking on Joshua's door first, or whoever holds the belts to say, you need to fight your mandatory. Tyson Fury now has held the belt for 14 months and he's not fought his mandatory. Fury hasn't defended a world title ever. Most of these governing bodies on their website say the champion must defend his mandatory once every 12 months. And I understand that's going to be impossible for someone like an Anthony Joshua, because he holds 3 of the 4 main belts. And I'll give him a bit of leeway in the sense of he has just defended his IBF against the number 1, who was Pulev at the time. So Joshua has fought a mandatory recently. But Tyson Fury, he won the belt last February. So what's going on here, people? Why even have rankings and eliminators and mandatories if the governing bodies aren't even going to stick to their own rules? Everything is just being made up as we go along. It's just so frustrating because there's so many good fights out there in the heavyweight division. There's so many good fights for Usyk. You know, I'd see him against Hughie Fury. Both guys are similar size. Otto Wallin, I think he's gone completely under the radar. I think that guy's got some good fights. I think him against Michael Hunter is a great fight. Michael Hunter, I think he could cause a lot of problems for people in the heavyweight division. No one's talking about him. No one's calling him out. That says a lot, people. But with Usyk, he really needs to get a move on now, because his goal is to be world champion at heavyweight. He's even spoken about being undisputed. I can't see that happening, because we're just not seeing these fights being turned around quick enough. All of these top guys should be fighting at least every 6 months. I mean, Fury now, he's been out the ring since his last fight 14 months ago. I just think that back when he won that WBC against Wilder, that was when the heavyweight division was back on the map. But now, I think it's just sort of slipped into the shadows again. I think the divisions that people are really excited about is your lightweight, your super lightweight, even your welter. You know, in those divisions, we're seeing huge unification fights. You know, we had last year Teofimo and Lomachenko. We've got coming up Taylor Ramirez. These are huge undisputed fights and exciting fights. And this is what boxing fans want and deserve. Heavyweight division is just getting staler and staler by the day. And the governing bodies aren't helping. You know, the WBO should be turning around to Joshua saying, you need to come out with a date, a venue for this fight by this date, or you fight Usyk. If not, you vacate. The WBC need to be saying the same to Fury. You need to come out with a venue and date for this fight. Otherwise, you need to fight your mandatory. Whether that's Dillian White or, well, I've already spoke about how Wilder's their number 1, which makes no sense. But either way, they need to be pushing for their mandatories. Because if you're these fighters that are in these top 15 rankings, why are you going to bother putting yourself in these WBC or WBO fights? Because going up the rankings means nothing. It's just a tick box exercise. It all comes down to nothing, because you're just going to sit at number 1, you know, for years. And it's not right. But look, where does Usyk go, people? Do you think he fights Joe Joyce next? If so, when? Why haven't we heard any news? If he doesn't fight Joe Joyce, who does he fight next? When do you think he should move on? If he doesn't hear any news by Joe Joyce, by when? You know? But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Obviously, if you like the video, click the thumbs up. And if you want to be notified when I drop a new video in the future, please consider subscribing. Cheers.